Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a very special guest. Well, everyone is a special guest, but this is my HR human resource specialist, my good brother, my mentor, Kevin Glover. Now, as you know, now we already kind of have an unofficial official agreement that we're going to hit, since I work in career services on the career side and he works in HR, that we're going to hit a couple points every now and then as they relate to both sides of the coin of, you know, my job at the university, getting the people to get their employment, and his job as in where they're there and what they do when they get jobs. So we're kind of a good 1-2 punch. Now, mind you, we're in a very special particular situation. I think if you would notice, we have not left the house, many of us. We're in a pandemic. So the world of work has changed significantly, or the world of work is being changed currently significantly. But as me and my good brother, Kevin Glover, are going to talk about, we're also going to talk about the future of work and how I think we both agree that the world of work is going to have significant changes post-pandemic. So for the listeners that probably have not heard you, 3 times so far on the show, therefore, shame on you for not knowing who this person is already. But for the listeners that are listening legit again for the first time, please introduce yourself to the listeners.
All right. Well, as Phil stated, my name is Kevin Glover. Been in the field of HR for a little over 10 years. Served in a lot of different capacities, worked in a lot of different industries, fast food, mass media, information technology, nonprofits, and government contracting and local government now. So seeing a lot of different policies and procedures, seeing a lot of different things that go on. So I would like to think that I'm pretty well versed in most things that could potentially go on in the HR department.
Yeah, I agree. And we discussed that early on a different episode of your range of experience from big to small companies, big systems to small systems, different types of employment, or we talked about different types of hiring and at will. So, but what I was made aware, which was unbeknownst to me, is that when I graduated college in 2008, I graduated during a recession. And I said unbeknownst to me because I didn't know that I was even in a recession when I graduated. But I brought that up on someone else's show about, you know, just being mindful of it. But we are in a new recession. Can you explain what that means in regards to, you know, just employment, what recession means?
Well, essentially what that means is the job market is going to be very tight. And what I mean by very tight is you won't have as many positions open as you do people that are looking for jobs. And so really in situations like this too, like in one of our previous episodes when we were talking about know your worth, this will probably be one of those instances where, you know, you may not get, you know, what you're asking for, like a $50,000 salary, but a company may offer you like 47, 46. Mm-hmm. And you have to make the decision of, do I want to take this at a slight reduction so I can be gainfully employed and, you know, still have money come in, even though it's not exactly what I want, it's not too far off the base, or, you know, you try your luck and roll the dice with another organization to actually stick with that salary that you are asking for in your job application and your resume. So that's kind of, you know, a very high level answer to that question. Is really about making certain sacrifices and kind of looking at your personal situation to determine is the decision best for you at this point in time in your life, or if you can wait it out for a potentially better opportunity down the road, whenever that may be, given that we don't know how long this downturn is going to last. Yeah.
So, do you think? I think a recession is linked to what? Is it linked to
It's
the debt?
quarters. It's 2 quarters of it's either decrease in GDP or negative GDP. It's one of those two. I didn't major in economics.
Yeah, but something to do with the money, right? But how does it overlap or intertwine with the I was trying to say, like, a recession usually is linked to, as you said, the GDP and the business. But how do you think it's intertwined with this pandemic? Like, do you think that while we go through these waves of pandemic, the recession goes through waves, or this pandemic needs to be completely over with before we can see an uprise in alleviation of a recession?
Well, I think the pandemic did bring this on very abruptly, because a lot of people were in service industry, and of course, a lot of the jobs that were lost were service industry related jobs. But then also, because the pandemic kept the country in a closed state for a period of time, your back office staff also had to take a hit. So your finance people, your procurement, your HR folks, well, maybe not necessarily all of your IT, because IT kind of is important at this point, but still a lot of the overhead trickle-down effect has taken place too. So COVID did play a part in it. It also kind of showed that there's some things that we may not necessarily go back to. A lot of companies have found that they can operate at optimal efficiency or somewhat close to it without as many staff members as they had prior to. Trickle down effect with office real estate. A lot of companies are saying that they can do work remotely from home. So why do I need to pay top dollar to be in a premier office location like Tyson's or, downtown in DC or Ross, Flint, and places like that, when, I could be in a little 2x4 in the middle of Kalamazoo and have my employees work wherever they need to work across the country. Yeah. So, the pandemic did kind of bring things to an abrupt halt, but I think when we do get back on the recovery, it's not going to be, the economy and the job market won't look the same as it did prior to the pandemic taking place.
So with that saying, not the same when, life and employment looking at the same. So should should people entering the workforce kind of look like, wow, my situation is going to get better once this pandemic is over with, or just naturally think that, like I said, should they match that the world's going to get better and employment's going to get better once this pandemic is eliminated or elevated, or should they just have a mindset that even after it's over with, there's still a little bit of employment struggles to foresee or to expect?
I think it's going to be a mixture of both, because on the positive side, you'll probably see a lot more positions that are remote working capable. On the negative side, there still is the aspect of what does that look like for a lot of organizations. Like a company I just left, a big thing that was really going through corporate America before the pandemic was shared office space. Take down the walls, get rid of the cubicles. Everybody's kind of in this big open cafe. When COVID happened, that office layout is not practical anymore. It is actually
that was going to be the new way with those co-working spaces, especially and also cross organization co-working spaces where they literally were just going to have like I think Amazon down there, and we're just going to have like to encourage collaboration, had these co-working spaces. But as you said, I don't think that's after this, they're going to still stick with those models.
Hold on. I think I got you back. Something happened.
So I'll have to edit that out. So let's just go back with, and I'll remember where we were because I'll time it 12 minutes. So after that, these co-working spaces, that's not going to really work out.
No, not at all.
Okay. So you brought up a good point about, I'm working remotely right now, solely remote. Probably when I go back, depending on the floor plan thing that Mason hasn't, is either going to be staggered off for staff, half of us in the office at a time, all that. But regardless of what, staggered or not, we realized that we have done almost 99% of our job efficiently from home. So what is that going to mean for work?
Okay, that looked like it froze again. So I heard it coming back, it's standard or not. What was the last part of that again?
Well, the standard part, and and I'll make sure I repeat it over again, is that we realize that working remotely, we've been pretty optimal. We've been working probably at like 99% productivity to realize that we have the skills to work remotely. Obviously, what we learned was the benefit of working in person is social and feeling good, but we are able to do this. So do you think that a lot of jobs are like, man, I know people like to see people, but productivity wise, other or not, they literally could got their job done. Maybe they'll never, even when we are alleviated from this pandemic, they're not going to return to in-person work because they know people did just as much or more.
Right. I mean, returning to work from this pandemic is going to be interesting because of what you just stated. But there's also still going to be aspects where some jobs, as much as we try to do them remotely, are not going to be able to be done at the best level that it could be done because you're not in the system. Like me for example, yeah, I'm working from home too, but there's certain things that I have to go into the office to do just because I will not be allowed access to certain things away from a controlled setting. So there will be some hurdles to jump over. I do believe that there will be more flexible teleworking arrangements. I do think coming back to this, we will have staggered work schedules. Kind of a 1 week in, 2 or 3 weeks out, and just kind of keep the population controlled so you can be safely spaced away from each other. It's going to be a very heavy ordeal because you're still going to have employees that are not going to feel safe coming back to work because they have, high risk or autoimmune issues to where they are extremely sensitive to what could be around them. And that's a hurdle that, we have to look at as a profession. And then also the aspect of, well, what happens if I get sick when I come to work? So, there's a whole lot of things that have to be taken into consideration for that. And it's not going to be a one size fit all. And I'll be honest and tell you, every situation is not going to be the best situation. Everybody is trying to figure this out at the same time. Yeah. And so there will be people that will be understanding, but there will also be people that won't be as understanding because some will feel that, you've had all this time. Why haven't you thought of it? And, the honest truth is, we're still in the same boat as everybody else. We're still waiting on regulations to come out. We're still waiting on the state to let us know what can and cannot be allowed in these certain situations. And I know asking for patience is kind of a, sad old song, but, it's really going to be patience, and we're really going to have to, everybody's going to have to be flexible. That's just how it is. I'm hoping most organizations will be flexible in their policies when it comes to employees and, taking sick leave or leave in general if they don't feel comfortable coming in whenever it is time to reopen.
But what about, okay, I saw this one thing where there's this whole policy now where you have to report at any inclination that you got sick, and then you have to send a doctor's note and tell them you had a positive test or negative test. Are companies allowed to force you to get a test, a COVID test? That's my one question. I'm not sure. And then if they find that you did get it or whatever, but you didn't tell them and do the form, are you liable to get fired?
That's a pretty loaded question, I will say.
I just saw it and I was curious. They're telling you is it like, yo, you got sick before? It was like something like the way they word it was like, if you indicated that you got sick, you are mandated to report it and tell us, the details. I didn't read it. You know me, I don't read the whole thing. That's probably my bad fault. But it was telling people, or just in general, let's speak hypothetically, I want to go back to work. I'm your employer. Can I say, I don't know if I want you to come back to work unless you get a COVID test?
So that funny. That's a very very slippery slope. And with anything in HR, in some cases yes, in some cases no. The yes part, I would say, it basically would depend on what your job is. If you were working in a very sensitive location, like nursing homes, for example,
Yes.
I could see that being a very stringent thing. On the flip side of that too, the no part of it is, well, yeah, you're my employer, but like if you were my supervisor and, let's say like we're not in HR, you cannot compel me to tell you something that is medically wrong with me because that's a violation of my HIPAA rights.
Is that HIPAA?
Yeah, that's a violation of HIPAA. Now, human resources can ask, but even with that, it has to be done in a manner that's not discriminatory because, if I was an older person and you say, well, I don't want you to come back to work until you get a COVID test, my question would be like, well why is that? Are you saying that, are you prejudging me, assuming that I have, COVID because of X, Y, and Z? Is it because of my age? Is it my ethnicity? Like, why are you coming at me asking me about COVID? So that is a very, very fine line.
Hold on. But don't in higher ed, like before you go to college, they make you submit your immunizations?
Yeah, I mean, now schools, yes, you have to submit immunizations and
what if I was like, I don't want to, you can't go to school, right?
No, you can't.
They'll put a hold on your account.
Yeah. Now, I mean, now you're talking about the workplace now, which.
Oh, okay. I mean, I'm kind of blurry. My workplace, I'm kind of blurry. Like, I guess I don't know if I don't remember if I had to submit as an employee my immunization. Well, I know I did because I was in school and going back to school, but I'm just not.
I know if you work in local school systems like elementary school, middle school, things like that, you do have to submit whether or not you had a tuberculosis shot.
Yeah, tuberculosis. Yeah.
You do have to do that, and that's for obvious reasons. You're working with little children. But I mean, like I said, with the thing with leave, like for example, with COVID leave, and really a key piece is kind of how your policy is as an organization. Like with us, for example, if you're out of work for 4 or more days, you're required to turn in a note, period. So whether or not you had COVID or the flu, you've been out for 4 days, you need to give me a note. Now, if your supervisor, if you come to work and you are, sneezing, running nose, like you just look bad, and your supervisor, reasonably can say, Phil looks terrible. Like, I'm sending him home because he does not look well. So there's some discretion there, but again, all of that is very circumstantial. So, I don't want to say definitively, yes, they can, or no, they can't, but it is very circumstantial.
Got it. I don't know. It's a tricky situation. I think and HIPAA and keeping people safe, the responsibility is to make sure they're safe. But at the same time, you have responsibility of HIPAA, like you can't infringe on someone's medical records.
Exactly.
So where is that line of privacy versus, individual privacy rights that we have as Americans, but also the protection of the greater good, right?
Right. Now here's the other thing too. Now, because there is COVID leave, now like I said, HR and HIPAA, there's a completely different scenario. Like, yeah, you may not have to tell your direct supervisor that what is wrong, but like me as an HR professional, for this COVID leave or anything like that, yeah, you will have to communicate with me, because if I don't know, then I can't give you what your entitlement is. Like, if you are entitled to COVID leave and you refuse to give me the information, then I can't help you.
But by a roundabout way, it'll still have to get to the supervisor, right? Because they'll have to approve your leave sometimes.
It does, but it doesn't. So like in my case, for example, if you came to me with that and I approved you for leave under COVID, unless you told your supervisor what you had, I would just say, so-and-so, Phil is not going to be at work for the next 3 days. I will let you know when he'll be able to come back to work. And it's just that simple. Supervisors, at least on my end, know that's all you're going to get. don't ask me for more. Do not ask the employee for any information. If you as the employee choose to tell them, by all means, you can. I will not.
Yeah, this is just another scenario. I probably have a very positive relationship with my supervisor, so I straight up told what I'm going through. But have you had that situation similar to that where they told you as the HR professional what's going on, but did not tell their supervisor due to, I don't know, maybe fear of retaliation, or I don't know. Have you had that before? Huh?
All the time. All the time.
And was it medically linked? Was it medically linked, or some other things like they spent the night in jail or something and they can't tell their boss? They were scared to tell their boss.
It's mostly medical related.
Yeah.
You know, the jail thing, that doesn't really bother me unless it's a felony. If it's a felony, then I will definitely, you know. But mostly it is medical things. Some of it is as simple as, you know, they found out they were pregnant. They didn't want to tell anybody right away because they don't want people to do differently right away.
Gotcha.
But it's a whole lot of things. But yes, I've even had instances where, you know, an employee has said explicitly, like, please do not tell my supervisor. And I will tell them, all I will tell them is that you will be out from work. Anything else, it will come from you if you choose to.
Gotcha. And in that scenario, for that one, like, please don't, like, what was their supervisor's reaction? They're like, okay, were they dumbfounded, or they were just like, they took it for what it was?
They took it for what it was, because, and that's the other thing about this role, I will say too, you have to have a rapport with supervisors and employees. You need to have that rapport with employees so they know that they can come to you with these situations, and the rapport with the supervisor so they know that you know what you're doing and you're not going to leave them in the lurch when you come to them and tell them that one of the employees will not be at work for a period of time.
Got it. That makes sense. So what, obviously, as you come out of recession, what are some lessons that you can say from, you know, I told my students during a recession, learn and informational interviews, but what are some lessons and tips that you can give incoming employees to do on their own in regards to, you know, getting a job during this recession?
Well, you know, like I said in the at the beginning of the show, I mean, really is you look to see what's out there, and you be flexible with your salary range. Like if you're qualified to do a job, you, more than likely you will get the interview. You'll go through that whole thing, and the ultimate question is salary requirements. So I mean, it's really being flexible with your salary. If everything about the situation and the job is great, and like I said, they're only off, you know, a couple $1,000s, then is it really worth, you know, $2 or $3 grand? In some cases, it might be. I don't know. But my thing is, you know, just like with, you know, people that are currently working that are, you know, need us to be flexible with their situations. Prospective job seekers need to be flexible as well. You know, this is, I'm not going to use the word that I do not like. I'm going to say this is just uncharted waters.
Yeah. Unparalleled or whatever you call it. What was it?
No, it's not unparalleled, but this is uncharted.
Unprecedented? I got you. I was trying to think of what word. I felt like it was a word game. I felt like I had to say it. I know what you're saying.
Yeah. It's just uncharted. This is uncharted territory.
Okay, I'm gonna use uncharted too.
Yeah. The other word is overkill, but flexibility is really the name of the game here, because you know there's still positions open, there's still opportunities out there. If you are qualified, it's just be flexible with your pay expectations. And
I mean, I would agree with that. I think the only part that's difficult with the pay and flexibility, maybe hopefully the remoteness makes it easier. It's like a lot of people can't just move. That's like probably one of the hardest parts to be flexible about, depending on extra factors like families and kids. Like now, if I was 22 years old, I got to take a job where I take a job. And I think the flexibility of moving. But I think during this recession, I think that added layer, like you can be a little bit flexible with a salary, but like some people, especially with the distancing and staying close to family, I think that part might be a little difficult to be flexible on.
Yeah, I mean, and it will be. And I think there will be, there will probably be trends where you'll see companies, because of the remoteness, that'll probably relocate out of expensive places like New York and San Francisco to probably go to more inexpensive places like, Kansas City, Memphis, or places like that where it's a little more affordable for people to move to and actually work from. But, it has to start somewhere. I do think it'll be a while before we get back to employment numbers that we had. I think right now we're over 30 million people without a job.
30. Okay, okay.
Yeah, so this is going to be a gradual change, and I think that a lot of it'll take place incrementally, even with the pay, because a lot of companies have slashed pay across the board.
Yeah,
and that's why flexibility with salaries is important, because you may be able to progressively get what you were missing back if the company you're working for can kind of get back to normal operations sooner rather than later. Because
I know a lot of companies, to save their staff, to do the best things, they cut things like extra stuff like professional development and like we used to pay for 10 memberships to this association. We're only gonna do 5. Which ones y'all actually use it? And they ask you which ones actually use it. But they're doing the best thing because they say, I'd rather slash this PD and keep my people. So you got to kind of just be open, and as you think. I think the key word for today's episode is flexibility, rather than just in general. But let's stick on the positive. What are you thinking? What are some positive things that companies are doing during this time to adjust and be better for their employees, or just or better in hiring? Like what do you think is like, wow, during this time they're doing some really positive things. I would give them kudos that some companies I've heard are doing this.
Well, a lot of companies that I'm running across are actually providing some form of mental health seminars for their employees, because a lot of people, especially individuals that are single, being confined in their home for a long period of time like this is really taking a drain on them mentally, and even to the point to where that line with the work-life balance has been blurred extremely, because how can you really have a work-life balance if your work computer is not too far from where your actual TV and living room is, or however your home situation is set up, where you're always at home and work constantly. So mental health has really been addressed across the board with a lot of organizations during this time. Of course, the main thing that we were talking about earlier, teleworking and the capabilities of that for employees, especially when we come back to work. Having that as a viable option in most cases if the need arises and the employee needs to have some type of flexibility due to whatever the reason may be. Those are really the 2 big things. I would say trust with employees being away from the office and teleworking, but I've heard good situations where supervisors trust their employees, and then I've heard some not so good situations where employees.
I'm ready. Okay, I'm ready. You knew by doing that, spilling some tea. I need to hear a couple bad circumstances. Like, tell me a crazy story. Like, I don't know, man. Like, this dude's not working from home. You saw him. He was in Daytona or something. I don't know.
Well, I mean, now before COVID, I did have a situation like that, but it wasn't teleworking. It was something about my mother was sick, and I need to be in North Carolina, South Carolina, something like that for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Okay, we got the proof, and I use open air quotes to justify it in some kind of way. I don't know how we found out. But found out that he was at Virginia Beach 1 week, and then at Myrtle Beach next week with pictures, while he was supposed to be taking care of his mother. And I'm using open air quotes again.
So he got himself caught up on the social media?
yeah. Pictures and everything. I don't know how we found out, but it did. We weren't.
I mean, are you saying HR people actively look, or someone snitched on him?
No, that, and that's what I was just about to say. We weren't like actively searching this man's social media page.
Someone snitched on him.
Somebody basically told him. It was probably one of his colleagues that had to take the brunt of his work, that they were friends on social media and saw it. So I'm thinking I believe that's kind of how it happened.
It has to be, but it had to be someone in his life though too.
True. But now with teleworking, the not so good things, which I think is a bit silly, is I've heard from some friends and whatnot where supervisor has a call with them every day at 8:30 in the morning, just because they only talk about work for like 5 or 10 minutes, and then they talk about BS for the rest of the time. And if you're not on that call on time, that person will dock you, your pay.
Oh, it's almost like a form of policing. It's almost like it was like a mind thing. Like they know they don't need you at 8:30, but they wanted to make sure that you are up doing your work.
And then there are other situations where I've heard where you have to actually chronicle what you do all day from start to finish. So like I Phil Wilkerson at 8 o'clock I logged in and I did this, and at 8:15 I did that. Like, you have to literally chronicle your day and send it to your supervisor. And so those types of things, you're like, okay, so you really don't trust your employees. So
also that's more work for you because you ain't gonna read that.
Basically. So, and I mean, in some companies even, and this has only happened once, not me, but this has happened where some companies will have their IT department go and monitor keystrokes. So
yeah, well, I mean, they could do well. There's a way. I mean, I know I've done it with my IT people where I needed help and she patched in and she was moving my mouse for me and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But are you saying that they were able to do it without the person's permission, or they say, yo, when you start, you have to let me VPN and start, like, part of my policing you is let me take over your screen.
Well, so here's the thing. If you're on a company computer, they don't need your permission because that's what they do. But every time you log into a work computer, you click on an authorization, acknowledging that, this is, your work computer.
Oh, yeah, their work computer, but they're at home, though.
Doesn't matter. You were using my system.
Oh, if you're talking about if I patch into the VPN?
Yeah, you patch to the VPN. If you're using a company-issued computer, that does not belong to you. Regardless of where it is, that belongs to that company.
But what if it's legit your home computer?
Then I would be asking, why are you doing work on your own computer?
Because they didn't give us a computer. You had to have your own technology when you came home.
Oh, that sucks for y'all.
I mean, fair fact. Like school counties, like Maggie got an issued laptop, but I didn't get an issued laptop.
Hey, you might need to talk about that. But I'm pretty sure if you have to log into your VPN or something remotely to get access to your work, then yes, they can check you for that. And once you get out of that system.
And you said, how did they do the keystrokes? Or they did the screen? I'm
thinking more than likely what they will do is, and I'm not an IT person, so I'm just going off of what I remember. Once you log in, your IP address and all that will ping to them, and then from that point, while you're in to the point that you're out, they can see all of that activity.
Oh, okay, activity. Yeah, an IP address says what website. Okay, that makes sense. So what you're saying, the negative side is you've seen, like, I don't know the word, another word besides policing or digital micromanaging. You've seen that. Examples of digital micromanaging.
Oh yeah.
Which is not right.
If you can't trust your employees, then you really that says something about you as a person.
But it's also extra work for yourself during this time, mental work, because you got to do your job and worry about everyone doing their job and micromanaging them.
Exactly.
So it's ineffective as a supervisor because you're doing like now double the work that you need to do.
Exactly, but some people feel like that is something that they need to do to make sure that things are done the right way. And my thing is, I would rather teach you and train you how to do it so you can be a better employee and hopefully even a better person. So you don't have to have somebody constantly looking over your shoulder to do something. I mean, if that's not what the job entails, then why? So, if I have to, always stand over you to watch you do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, I'm better off doing it myself because I can probably do it quicker, get it out of the way, and do something else.
Has your office or HR office done something new or not say innovative, but something you've never done before during this time, like a new workshop series on best practices, or have you done something new that y'all haven't done before? I mean, not like new as a new technology. We've had Zoom, but have you done a new meeting or new workshop or something like that during this time?
Yeah, we've had new workshops. Ironically, we've had basically how how to get feedback as a supervisor. That was a workshop. My supervisor has done that. She's been the main one hitting the new training and development pieces during this time.
Okay.
So that's kind of been a big thing right now, trying to do stuff in-house, just like I was mentioning with the mental health thing, because we have a partnership within the county and the school system. We share those resources. So we have those things that are still ongoing. I think we're trying to do virtual sessions and whatnot, but of course with HIPAA violations, because when you're speaking to therapists and things of that nature, you need to have privacy.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Just like we're using this platform right now, information that's being communicated through here could technically be the sole property of that organization of the platform.
Zoom. It could be Zooms, you're saying. Yeah.
Right. So, you need to have certain things in line to where if we were having a confidential conversation about certain things, that it does not lead between you and I. But those are really the big things. I mean, right now it's just trying to get through the end of the school year and just kind of see what we do for the next year.
Are you a 12-month or 10-month?
12.
So what is the summer looking like for HR staff over the summer? And also particularly, I know within the school system, a lot of times, isn't that like where an influx of hiring is happening over the summer? Like in between school years, is that like something that y'all anticipate to be totally different and a new world over COVID? Like I guess even getting the ID all the way down to the ID cards. How we visualizing that?
Everything is going to be completely different because essentially, in most cases, a lot of the functions that we have done have been frozen in time since we formally closed the office before this remote working kicked in. So essentially what's going to have to happen, which we talked about it, before we start the new school year technically, we're going to have at least a week or two just to formally and officially close out from the current school year. So everything is being reimagined all the way down to, what does open enrollment look like?
Yeah.
We're so used to doing so many things in person, and a lot of people like those in-person type of things, but realistically speaking, we cannot function the same way we did pre-COVID. So everything is going to be turned on its head. It's actually our busy time of year because fiscal year is, so it's going to be time to start for a new fiscal year. So there's going to be a lot of things that we have to do, and there's going to be a lot of things we're going to be reimagining. So this is going to probably be a busier summer. Usually summer is pretty quiet because you everybody in session and you can kind of maneuver the way you need to. But I think this is going to probably be very, very busy.
I think that's the same here because I'm 12-month and usually the in-person campus is completely dead. So, but we're going to have so much busy planning work to do over the summer. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know if summer technically is going to be any easier or it's just going to feel like just a continuation of the spring semester. We've been working on all cylinders. This has not been easier. This is not actually, I feel like, honestly, I've done more work.
Yep.
I've done more work during this time and when I say more work, not like less student-facing work, but more administrative planning and research and paperwork than I ever done.
I think the big thing that a lot of people will need to do, and I've told this to a few colleagues and even associates across the board. Granted, I know we can't go anywhere like that per se, but for those of us that are still working, you're gonna have to take days off. You have to use vacation time. Like I've already told my folks in July, there's gonna be a period I will not do any work. I'm take my vacation day. Hopefully by July I may feel comfortable enough to go. Visit my family. But we have to unplug officially from work for a period of time every now and then because, like I said earlier, the work-life balance is not there anymore because our work and life are one and the same right now because we're always here.
Yeah. No, I might have to take a staycation myself where literally I'm not going anywhere, but just I'm not on this computer. I'm not logged in. and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not, and no one's, because I do see that like coming. Like I'm not physically going anywhere, but I am also like working on fumes a little bit because I'm doing more mental. My mind is working way faster, as in like volume of work for my mind. My mental work is a lot more than physical work because I'm not walking around campus like I like to, but my mind is working around like way harder.
I'm working around the clock here too a little bit. I mean, there have been times I would get back online, 7, 8 o'clock because I forgot to do something or
Yeah, yeah.
something I need to check. And I mean, I'm surprised to see some of my colleagues online. And I actually had a late work phone call last week, just because we were both online and there was something that we needed to handle. So. And that's another reason why just taking that mental time off just to not do anything is important because of situations like that.
Well, I noticed that too when I know someone wanted to keep the email in the drafts, but you definitely saw that they sent it at 10 o'clock at night. AKA, I'm that person.
Yeah.
I'm that person that sent the email at 10 o'clock at night. I mean, I know they weren't going to answer, but they're going to see it in the morning.
Yeah. I'm one of the ones I'm looking at emails like, you were up at 11:38 at night doing work emails?
Yeah.
That's somebody today. I saw an email that came in from yesterday, almost close to midnight. I said, why are you working so late?
No, I'm glad. I have yet to see. No, I think I've seen one from a 2 a.m. Like an insomnia one. I saw insomnia one. I definitely saw an insomnia work where that person was like just up, and obviously they knew it wasn't like answer me at 2 o'clock, but they were just getting the thoughts out their mind at 2 o'clock, and I was like, oh, like, and you're right, like the line is just so blurred right now. Your work life line is so blurred.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man, we hit a good part of our show. I think we're going to do a shot for shot because I have a feeling that one of our shot for shots is going to be a pretty long question. I don't know. I just feel it. So you want to go first? I go first for a shot for shot.
You go first.
All right. So, I really avoid race and I avoid, not race, but I don't try to be controversial, but knowing that we're both black men, we're both men of the first historically black fraternity. I just want to ask how you feeling about all this that's going on in our nation, and maybe one particularly how you feel as a yourself, and then also how do you feel like that affects just the world of work too, like these feelings? Because I'll post this in the comments. I posted an article that said, white employees, be mindful that your black employee is going to have a lot of just distraction in their mind, like, yeah, they'll get their work done, but at the same time, they're like grieving behind the scenes, or that they're distracted, or they checked out. And I ain't gonna lie, that was some of those things in that article that I'll share in the comments was me. So I'm just curious. One is how you feeling about it, and how do you think this affects the world? And I would say not the world, but how does it affects the work world, particularly just being mindful of human resources. Like the key word is human. How does that affect the human aspect?
Well, I'll answer the easy part first, which is the workplace. Being a black male in human resources is interesting in this time because you hear all the stuff about diversity and inclusion coming from your HR department and unconscious bias and all the different sensitivity courses and things of that nature. So it is always difficult, even before this, to where you have to, portray yourself in a certain manner and, just make sure that, your P's and Q's are always in line. Mm-hmm. So you are not offensive to anybody, but inclusive to everyone. Mm-hmm. I think after what happened to George Floyd in Minneapolis, it really, brought a topic back to the surface that hasn't truly gone away. Mm-hmm. And, addressing it is still just as difficult now as it was back in the 60s because, one of the, big pieces of legislation that, HR people know across the board is Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Mm-hmm.
And when you really think about it, we're not even 50 years from that. We're close
Mm-hmm.
to it, if I'm not mistaken. But, you know,
Yeah.
that stuff is still unfolding. And I think navigating that now in the workplace will be very,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be very, very cautious, because a lot of people are going to want to try to understand, what we're going through, how we're feeling. And in some cases, like I've seen articles that say the same thing too. Now that we're not really in a place to really talk about that right now, just like with anything else, is give us some time, let us, process kind of how we're feeling at the moment, and then, I may be in a better place to really express the way that I feel in a manner that you will understand. Because what I would not like to happen is, for you to get the raw uncut of everything, because that could happen if if certain things, certain conditions are met.
Yeah,
So,
I got that.
it's kind of like, let me have my inner peace. Like, yes, you'll see my facade for right now, so I
Yes.
can cordial and productive, but let's just keep it right there at the face front. Like, we don't need to go any
Right.
deeper right now.
That
And
makes sense.
yeah, and I mean, I think among people, I think among us, having conversations like you and I, as black men in the workplace like that, I think that's probably the first step for us to try to really get our feelings together in a working sense, because we can have that type of conversation and
Mm-hmm.
not have to explain in all these great details why, because we understand why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Like create the
First,
black spaces, create black spaces at work. But the only thing is, the only hard part is to create black spaces at work is like 5 people.
right, well, I mean, but you know what? And sometimes that's all you need. I mean, in some
Yeah,
places you may not even have one.
yeah,
So,
that's true.
I mean, you
Yeah.
need to be able to have, and I know that's kind of contradictory to that, inclusivity piece of HR, but, and this is just an honest to goodness thing, like, you really need to have, you need to have a safe space for yourself, and people like you to really kind of get your thoughts out.
Yeah.
Without it, you don't want to keep all that stuff in. Now, with everything that has gone on, to kind of get into that, like I said earlier, this is really brought back up to the surface what has always been there,
Yeah.
for decades. The fact that a black man was literally, murdered
Yeah.
on, I don't want to say it wasn't live TV, but was basically
Social media, TV. Yeah.
it was videotaped, it was streamed from start to finish.
Yes.
And the fact that something like that can still happen today,
Yes.
and still have rhetoric that people have not heard in a very massive way, like that kind of brings up feelings of the 50s and 60s. When there's language being used about, vicious dogs and things of that nature, that sounds, like things that, my grandparents and, relatives have gone through. And, the fact that everybody that is exercising their rights under the Constitution and the First Amendment are being, deemed as extremists or, looters and things of that nature is kind of disheartening. Now, are there looters? Yes, there are.
Yeah.
Are there people that are taking advantage of the situation? Yeah, there are. And that's in almost every, bit of protest that you see.
Mm-hmm.
But, there are more peaceful people in these protests than there are not peaceful people.
Yeah.
And the reason why in some cases, and I did say some, the reason why in some cases you'll see things go from a peaceful setting to a more, I'm not going to say destructive, but a more visual protest where you see, fires and things like that, is to get your attention. Because I've seen one article where it says, you didn't like it when I kneeled to protest. You don't like it when I march in the street to protest. You definitely do not like it when I'm destroying property and buildings and things like that to protest. So the big question is then, how am I supposed to protest? How am I supposed to get these? How am I supposed to express to you what is wrong when you're telling me all the avenues that I should have available to me in most cases?
Right.
I cannot do. Silent protest isn't good. Vocal protest isn't good. Obstructive protest isn't good. Then what protest do we? Then what can we do?
Yeah, right.
And so that, and then with some companies and organizations with the hypocrisy of this whole thing is baffling. Like the NFL with the statement that they released about solidarity and things of that nature. And then I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, Colin Kaepernick did the exact same thing with kneeling a couple of years ago, and you completely destroyed his career. And
yeah, but also, and then didn't they still say recently that if you kneel, they can get fined?
I don't even know anymore with that.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's basically at this point, like when I was telling you before about my NBA protest for all those years.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like that with the NFL right now, so I'm probably going to be on my NFL protest.
I might too. I don't know. I got to find another way to do pick 'em. Maybe I'll do pick 'em with college football.
I don't know. Maybe. So
I like college football too.
Of course I do. Go Dogs. But yeah, I mean that's really kind of how it is. Still kind of going through all of the emotions of it, because my thing, and I believe I've told you this too. Protesting is on one phase of it. There is another phase, and that's making sure that after we make our voices heard and everything, is moving to the next step to make sure we're still at the table to have these conversations to move the needle in the right direction. Making sure that we keep engaging with our local, state, and federal representatives to ensure that they know that just because you may not see us protesting anymore does not mean that this is not a problem, that this still needs to be addressed. And so going down that path to make sure that we continue to keep the narrative front and center, so that these changes that we are out there in the streets protesting for can be actually made to have a better country, have a better, life in general for all of us, for you, me, for the kids, and, everybody else out there, so we can all be true American citizens without having to worry about, having a knee placed on our neck just because, we are a darker shade than you are. We have to figure this out.
Yeah.
And I don't have the answer. I'm not saying that I do have the answer. I don't know who has the answer.
Nice.
But the answer there needs to be a collective answer come from, either a group of individuals or something, because this is completely, this is just completely ridiculous.
Well, I think it's also that the pandemic didn't work, and then I think that everyone's home, and that this is like social media is excellent.
Yeah.
Like I think that it would have been sad, and I don't know. I really visually say like this is like how many hashtags that we have, but this one is probably the most blown up I've seen, because I don't think no one else is doing anything but seeing that video over and over again, and using it.
Like I said, really at this point, people don't have anything to lose, because this was almost a perfect storm of things. You have over 30 million people without a job.
Yes.
You have racism alive front and center. So people are at home.
Yeah.
People are unemployed. People are working from home. So folks had nothing but time
to watch and see. Yeah.
So and like you said, that's been on repeat over. And I think it's that was also another catalyst to really get the mass number of people that you see today out in the streets, because of all these other things that are going on at the same time. Not saying that if we didn't have COVID, that the response wouldn't be the same. Probably would be. I don't know, but it likely would be. But this has to stop. How many more people have to be killed at the hands of police?
Right.
So I'm off my soapbox. I usually don't get it. I don't get into that on podcasts like this.
I don't either. Like I said, I don't either. But there's something about this one and this COVID and this thing is like, I don't know. So like I said, we said our two piece. I think, most of our listeners, I'll be honest with you, I think they agree with us. I don't think we get trolled or anything, but
I
I
mean,
don't know.
that's the rated G version.
Yeah, that wasn't right. It's still, yeah, we still got the G.
Yeah, we still got the G.
All right, go ahead. What's your question for me?
Lord. I was actually I wasn't gonna go down that road, but I'll bring it back to something different. What is Mason doing for all of you during this tough time with COVID and even with the recent George Floyd situation? Has Mason released a statement? What's going on with you and your colleagues?
As there's a couple of things. So like we could talk about the professional development and the statement. Well, I know the president and the new incoming president and the interim president released a statement, which was very supportive of the community. And then, that felt very good to have the leadership speak up on it. And then in regards to our offices, there's been many groups and silos where people like use their webcam and say, hey, I just want to do a venting session. Who wants to join the venting session? And people have been talking about it, amongst the coworkers, which has been good to find that community on campus. In regards to COVID in general, a lot of offices have done a lot of, as you said, the well-being piece digitally. We have a bunch of mindfulness practitioners. So they do yoga and meditation sessions via Zoom. So you log in and you can participate in the meditation or guided meditations. What else have we done? They've done workshops, trainings such as yours. Zoom has gone crazy. A lot of events just completely turned remote, like just Zoom everything. But I think a lot of people, especially certain colleges, have really tapped into their alumni and have used their alumni to do presentations back to their school. Like, hey, you want to learn what a current, alumni from the Center of Arts is doing with their career? And they would reach out. Now they're having these Zoom calls, broadcasted or Facebook Lives or Instagram Lives with alumni giving back and talking about their experiences. So I think the university is really trying to go full tilt with technology. And then in regards to this, I think they're just trying to definitely have a conversation, because I think one of the main responsibilities of higher ed, I believe, and this is Philip Wilkerson, this is not the opinion of George Mason University, but Philip Wilkerson, I think a lot of universities as higher ed have a responsibility that a key part of this is education, right? And education as in to beat systemic racism and oppression, we need to be enlightened, informed, and educated, aware. And so universities doing commitments to that, encouraging reading, encouraging book clubs, encouraging many groups to talk about diversity and inclusion, but with real literature, real conversation. So I'm in a lucky piece because, we're a bunch of brainiacs, universities, we talk. I'm just saying, we're at a college. Like, colleges are meant for, intellectual thought and dialogue and conversation. Now, honestly, we need to take it to a step further and say action too, right? We can't just talk all the time. We need to do stuff. But you notice that throughout time, colleges have been always the hotbed of protest, right? College protest and stuff like that. So we have to also respect that we know our students are going to protest back home or wherever they're at, and still support them, because I think essentially the mindset of college was built on educating yourself and then protesting. And, all colleges had that. Like, they let you protest outside the president's office, but as long as you don't damage anything, that was just kind of the mindset of universities. So free speech. So I think the university, I believe, and this is Philip Wilkerson, I believe our university is doing a good job of creating a space for dialogue and also being open to the protest and anger. I can't speak to the future, but I hope that we don't just do these talks amongst our colleges, that we actually implement, policies and just things where the campus is reflective of that. Like, we don't buy in or encourage systemic racism on our college campus.
Right. No,
And even in covert ways, like microaggression ways that we legit, like, if you're a black student and you come to campus, you don't feel like, okay, wow, they say they diverse, but this and this happened to me. That was just kind of like lip service,
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's where the unconscious bias training and stuff like that would come in. So, no, you're right.
But and they have a whole office and staff committed to this, and I think that I think their hands are tied a little bit because a lot of things they want to do, to engage with people, it has to be remote right now. I'm pretty sure some of the officers and some of the advocates on campus really want to march, but they got to be mindful of social distancing. But I think the university is doing a good job. I think it's just, I think what I'm really interested to not just see with my university, but just all these organizations and all these people that are upset is, what's that energy going to look like? Are you going to keep that same energy 6 months from now? Or are you going to keep that same energy? Are you going to keep that same energy when we're face to face? And actually not COVID, non-pandemic, because and I'm let me be honest, totally to myself. Like, I'm being a keyboard warrior. Am I going to be able to be an in-person warrior beyond just the keyboard warrior once this is all done?
Yeah.
And I'm saying that to myself, so I have to hold myself accountable. I hope that the organizations that say they're going to do what they do hold themselves to accountable as well. But we'll see. So, hey, the last part of the show, as you know, shot for shot. No, not shot for shot. Sorry, I already did that. Shout outs and plugs. So go ahead, and I know you really don't do a lot of shout outs. No, you don't do a lot of plugs. You do some shout outs. So do some shout outs. And then I know, are your people still making music?
Well, it's a pandemic going on right now.
Okay, they ain't got no show, but you got to still plug them.
Well, I mean, of course I still plug, the group Say Leave, like it's good group based out of, well, I'm not saying based out of Baltimore, that's just one of the boys live. Say Leave, very good group. They still got an album out, good album, check it out. I know you put that information in the comment section. The other shout outs I probably have to give would be to, first responders, the ones that, we know about, the ones that may not necessarily be, too known about, like your delivery man, your grocery store folks, people that have been out there, prior to every opening, of course, but, just keeping the, the wheels on the bus turning while we're still going through all of this. So, shout out to all of them. Shout out to my mom. Love you, mom. But yeah, that's really my shout outs.
Well, it's always a pleasure. We're probably gonna do always employment questions. I'm already thinking about life after COVID, work life after COVID, and all this stuff. But anytime you have a topic, you got an open lane to share your voice on my on my platform. I said share my voice on my platform like I got a huge audience, but you know what I meant. You always, if you got any idea.
I have a home here is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. You have to. You got a home in person and digitally, remotely. On a Positive Philter. Always got a voice in anything that you want to shoot. You want to talk about, we're down with. But I always appreciate your support. As I said earlier, even from the mentorship, you brought me into the house. Now you're stuck with me permanently. I don't know. I think I also passed my warranty of you giving me back to whoever, because I've been in alpha for about 3 years now. So
have you been? I don't know. Maybe 2, maybe. Has it been 3?
It'll be 3 years. It'll be 3 years in November.
Okay, I didn't think it was 3 yet.
Almost, but most warranties are 90 days, so you've been already expired. You can't get me back now, and so. And Maurice knows that too. He already knew me too long. So both of you guys are stuck with me. And I always appreciate your support, and you always got a home on here. And thank you. I think now you're the reigning champ for being the most guested or most frequent guest, most frequent guest on the podcast.
You on the show now?
Huh?
I got the most appearances, really?
I think so. Shannon's trying to come for your title though, but that's another That's another. That's another thing. This Bama Shannon, who I love. Shout out to him. He be hitting me like I'm ready. I'm ready with an episode. I'm like, all right. Well, you let me know what country you're in. So but thank you so much for supporting this podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, especially in HR, because as we know, like I said, employment is a big part of people's lives, and so knowing what they can think and expect, and having these questions answered has been helpful for me to know a little bit more. But also, I think for the incoming employees, especially my young college students, this is going to be helpful. And I definitely don't lie, I do send this to some kids. Listen to my show. But yeah, no shame. So thank you, Kevin. If you have any questions, please, I would really like to one day do a Q&A straight up. I don't have the questions. So if you have any questions for the podcast, particularly employment-related questions, please start sending those to the podcast. I'll put the question form in the link, and maybe me and Kevin will do a Q&A episode of some real employment questions, straight employment, resume, cover letter, all that kind of stuff. Throw those in there. I'll compile all the career-related questions to kind of have that 1-2 punch of our advice on those things. Keep on checking out the show at Positive Philter. Filter is spelled with a PH. You can also leave a voicemail at 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. Thank you so much for being a listener to the podcast, and we out. Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.